certified incident briefings, real video evidence, strict accountability. You are viewing Bodycam incident reports.
We got a complaint. Suspicious behavior.
I've been sitting here for hours.
ID. Now.
Am I being detained?
Yeah, last warning.
I'm just...
Hands behind your back! Stop resisting!
I am not
Put your hands back! Now!
hurting me.
Don't move!
Central City Public Library, 2:15 p.m. Leon Grant, a 24-year-old law student, sat in the corner studying. On the table sat his laptop, 3 confidential clinic files, and his phone mounted on a small tripod. The phone was actively broadcasting the documents to a muted live Zoom session with his professor and 3 classmates. Before the officer makes his first move, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? The heavy thud of tactical boots broke the silence. Officer Myers, a 15-year patrol veteran, walked directly up to Leon's table. He stopped, resting his thumbs on his duty belt, projecting casual authority. "We got a complaint from the staff," Myers said, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "Suspicious male matching your description, looking into unattended bags near the stacks. Need to see your ID." Leon's fingers stopped over his keyboard. A sudden sharp spike of adrenaline hit his chest. He took one shallow breath to steady himself, deliberately keeping his hands flat on the table. "Officer, I've been at this desk for 3 hours," Leon said, his voice polite but tight. "I haven't been near the stacks." Myers's casual posture vanished. The polite phase was over. He stepped half a pace closer, invading Leon's space. "I didn't ask for your schedule," Myers snapped. "ID, now." Leon knew his state didn't have a stop and identify law without reasonable suspicion of a specific crime. But knowing the law and saying it to an armed cop were 2 different things. He swallowed hard. "With respect, officer, am I being detained?" Myers' jaw tightened. "Yeah, you're detained. Hand it over before we do this the hard way." Leon's voice shook slightly, but he forced the words out. "If I'm detained, what specific crime do you suspect me of? Sitting in a library isn't a crime?" Myers stared at him. He didn't see a student. He saw a target defying a direct order in public. "I'm not debating you. Last warning, ID." Leon looked at the officer, then down at his open laptop. He made a decision. "I verbally identified myself as a patron. Without a lawful basis, I'm not giving you my physical ID," Leon said. He slowly reached for his laptop to close it. "If I'm not under arrest, I'm packing up my things and leaving." Leon's hand touched the edge of his laptop lid. That single mundane movement was the trigger. To Officer Myers, a suspect attempting to end the interaction was a suspect preparing to flee. It was an unacceptable loss of control. "You aren't going anywhere," Myers barked. He didn't reach for his handcuffs. He closed the distance in a split second. Myers' heavy gloved hand clamped brutally onto the collar of Leon's cream-colored hoodie. With a sharp, violent jerk, he yanked Leon up from the chair, throwing him off balance before driving his full body weight forward. Myers slammed Leon's chest hard against the edge of the heavy oak table. The impact shook the desk. The small tripod tipped over. Leon's smartphone hit the hardwood floor, sliding underneath a nearby chair. The screen cracked, but the green recording light stayed solid. The camera's wide-angle lens now rested sideways on the floor, perfectly framing Myers's tactical boots and Leon's legs. Miles away, a law professor and 3 students watched the live feed in absolute silence. "Hands behind your back! Stop resisting!" Myers shouted, his voice echoing across the stunned library. He drove his knee hard into the back of Leon's thigh, forcing him down toward the floor. Blinding pain shot through Leon's shoulder as Myers wrenched his left arm backward at a high angle. Natural panic flared in his chest, the basic human instinct to pull away, to protect his own joints from tearing, screamed in his head. Instead, Leon forced his body to go completely limp. He let his knees give out entirely, dropping his dead weight to the floor to neutralize the joint lock. "I am not resisting," Leon yelled. His voice was strained with pain, but he pitched it loud and clear, ensuring the phone's microphone captured every syllable. "I am not resisting. My hands are behind my back." "Stop pulling away," Myers yelled back, loudly broadcasting standard use of force commands for his own body camera, completely ignoring the physical reality of the limp student beneath him. Leon kept his right arm entirely slack, offering zero muscle tension. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit deeply into his wrists. The ratchets clicked shut with a sharp mechanical snap. Myers stood up, hauling Leon to his feet by the tight chain of the cuffs. "You're under arrest for obstruction and resisting an officer." Leon Grant was hauled to his feet. His chest heaved, his left shoulder burned from the joint lock, and the cold steel handcuffs bit deeply into his wrists. Officer Myers stood over him, breathing heavily. The library was dead silent. A dozen patrons stared in shock from the surrounding tables. Myers shoved Leon toward a wooden chair. Leon sat down, his hands pinned awkwardly behind his back, staring straight ahead. Myers immediately turned his attention to the oak table. He grabbed Leon's dark canvas backpack and yanked the zippers open. He plunged his gloved hands inside, aggressively pulling out a textbook, a laptop charger, and a handful of pens, scattering them across the wood. "Officer," Leon said. His voice was no longer shaking, but it was tight and strained. "I don't consent to a search of my bags." Myers ignored him. He reached deeper into the backpack and pulled out 3 thick yellow manila folders. He tossed them onto the table. Leon saw the bold red stamp on the covers. "Confidential, clinic privilege." "Those are confidential legal files," Leon stated, pitching his voice just loud enough to carry. "Client info and case files. You can't open those without a warrant." Myers paused. His thumb rested on the edge of the top folder. He looked down at the red stamp, then up at the student in the hoodie. A brief flicker of hesitation crossed his face, but it was quickly replaced by visible irritation. "Checking for concealed contraband incident to arrest," Myers muttered, aiming the justification directly at his own shoulder mic. He flipped the top folder open. His eyes darted across the dense paragraphs of legal text and client information. There were no razor blades taped to the paper, no hidden baggies, just words. After 2 seconds, Myers snapped the folder shut in frustration and tossed it carelessly onto the pile. The table was a mess of scattered academic supplies and confidential paperwork. There was absolutely nothing illegal in sight. Myers stepped back and grabbed the tight chain of the handcuffs, yanking Leon up. "Stand up," he ordered. "You're going to county for disorderly conduct." Officer Myers returned to the precinct, logged into a terminal, and typed his incident report. He wrote that the suspect became visually agitated and refused lawful commands, explicitly adding that Leon swung his arms aggressively toward this officer, necessitating a physical takedown. Myers hit submit, cleared his screen, and walked back out to his patrol cruiser. 3 months later, a windowless conference room at the county courthouse. The assistant district attorney handling the misdemeanor docket slid a printed sheet across the table, tapping his pen. "Standard plea," the ADA said, checking his watch. "Noise ordinance violation, $150 fine. We drop resisting and obstruction. It all goes away today." Leon sat perfectly still, hands folded in his lap. His attorney ignored the paper, unzipped a leather briefcase, and placed a tablet flat on the center of the table. "Supplemental discovery for the state," the attorney said, pressing play. The ADA leaned forward. The cloud-saved Zoom recording played brightly on the screen. Myers' loud entry echoed from the tablet speakers. Leon's shaking voice asked for articulable suspicion. Then, the physical breach. Leon's hands remained entirely flat on the oak table. Zero aggression. No swinging arms. Myers lunged from behind, slamming the student into the wood. The camera fell, the angle shifted, and the clear audio captured Leon stating he wasn't resisting. followed immediately by Myers reading confidential case files aloud. The ADA reached out and paused the video on a frame of Myers's boot planted near Leon's head. Silence filled the small room. The ADA slowly shifted his gaze from the frozen screen to the printed police report in his open file. He stared at the phrase, swung his arms aggressively for several long seconds. He picked up the plea agreement, folded it in half, and slid it back into his folder. The state dismisses all charges with prejudice, the ADA stated flatly. He stood up. We're done here. Room 4, B, Internal Affairs Division. A digital recorder sat in the center of the metal table. Investigator Hughes slid a printed copy of the incident report toward Officer Myers. Officer Myers, for the record, Hughes said, his voice completely flat. You wrote that Leon Grant became visually agitated and swung his arms aggressively. Do you confirm this sequence of events? Myers sat back in his chair. He knew his body camera hadn't buffered the first 2 minutes of the interaction. A civilian complaint without footage was just paperwork. That's correct, Myers stated. He escalated. I secured him. You are certain his hands left the table to strike you? Yes. Hughes didn't take notes. He didn't ask a follow-up question. He reached to his left, turned a laptop to face Myers, and hit the space bar. The cloud-saved Zoom footage played, the clear audio of Leon's questions, the hands resting perfectly flat on the oak table, the sudden violent lunge from behind, the undeniable audio of Myers reading confidential clinic files aloud while the suspect lay pinned on the floor. Hughes tapped the spacebar, freezing the video on Myers's boot, standing over the handcuffed student. The small room was dead silent. Myers stared at the screen. He didn't shift in his chair. He didn't try to explain it away. He looked at the frozen image of his own hands grabbing the student's neck. Hughes slowly pulled the printed report back across the table and placed it into a red folder. Place your badge and your service weapon on the table, Hughes said. You are stripped of police powers, effective immediately. 3 days after Officer Myers lost his badge, Leon Grant's attorney, David Sterling, filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. He sued Myers for the assault and the Central City Police Department for a pattern of failing to supervise its officers. The city attorney, Sarah Jenkins, filed an immediate motion to dismiss the case against the city. She argued Myers was an isolated incident. Sterling responded by subpoenaing Myers's entire 15-year employment history, including every use of force report he had ever written. Jenkins tried to block the subpoena in federal court. Judge Thomas didn't entertain a long argument. He had already watched the library video. The plaintiff has demonstrated a fabricated justification for a takedown, Judge Thomas ruled. He denied the city's motion and ordered the files turned over. The city retaliated by sending a delivery truck to Sterling's law firm. Workers unloaded 60 bankers' boxes containing tens of thousands of unindexed, disorganized police records. It was a standard tactic to bury the plaintiff in paperwork. Leon and a team of law students turned a conference room into a workspace. They ignored the civilian complaints, knowing internal affairs routinely dismissed them. They focused entirely on Myers's written narratives, systematically reading through every instance where Myers used physical force. Late on a Tuesday night, they found the pattern. Leon pulled a use of force report from a minor traffic stop. He read the justification. He pulled another from a jaywalking stop and a third from a noise complaint. The incident spanned several years and involved completely different suspects. In all of them, Myers had typed the exact same justification. The suspect became visually agitated, refused lawful commands, and swung his arms aggressively toward this officer, necessitating a physical takedown. The legal team searched the remaining boxes for that specific phrase. Over 15 years, across 62 separate incidents resulting in violent takedowns, Myers had used that identical sentence, word for word. The liability for the city fundamentally shifted. It wasn't just that one officer wrote the same fabricated sentence 62 times. It was that over a decade and a half, dozens of patrol sergeants, lieutenants, and internal affairs investigators had read that exact sentence on 62 different reports and stamped every single one of them approved. Armed with the 62 reports, Sterling drafted new subpoenas for the 6 sergeants who had signed them. Within 4 hours of filing the new subpoenas, the city attorney's office called Sterling and offered a $2 million settlement to close the case immediately. Sterling rejected the offer in writing. He demanded a deposition on the record. The deposition took place in a windowless conference room at David Sterling's law firm. A digital camera mounted on a tripod pointed directly at former Officer Myers. A court reporter sat in the corner, typing silently. Leon Grant sat next to his attorney. He didn't speak. Sarah Jenkins, the city attorney, sat next to Myers. Sterling started the recording and established the oath. Myers acknowledged he was testifying under the penalty of perjury. Sterling pressed play on a laptop. The Zoom video from the library played. It showed Leon's flat hands on the oak table, Myers' sudden ambush, the takedown, and the audio of Myers reading the confidential files. Sterling paused the video. "Mr. Myers," Sterling said, "did Leon Grant swing his arms aggressively toward you?" "No," Myers answered. "You wrote in your official report that he did. Was that a false statement?" "It was an error in the narrative caused by adrenaline," Myers recited. Sterling didn't argue. He reached into a banker's box beside his chair and pulled out a manila folder. He slid it across the table. Exhibit A. Your use of force report from a May 2017 traffic stop, Sterling said. Read the highlighted sentence. Myers looked down at the paper. The suspect became visually agitated, refused lawful commands, and swung his arms aggressively toward this officer, necessitating a physical takedown. Sterling immediately slid a second folder across the table. Exhibit B, an August 2019 arrest for jaywalking. Read the highlight. Myers cleared his throat. The suspect became visually agitated and swung his arms aggressively toward this officer. Jenkins placed her hand flat on the table. Objection, relevance. It establishes a pattern of fabricated reports, Sterling replied without looking at her. He slid a third folder forward. Exhibit C, January 2021. The arrest of a 68-year-old man for a noise complaint. Read the highlight. Myers stared at his own signature at the bottom of the page. He read the exact same sentence. Sterling didn't stop. He placed exhibits D, E, and F in front of Myers. He forced Myers to read the identical sentence from a 2014 loitering arrest, a 2016 public intoxication arrest, and a 2022 broken taillight stop. 6 different suspects, spanning 8 years, supposedly engaging in the exact same physical movement requiring a violent takedown. Sterling picked up a thick binder containing the remaining 56 reports. He dropped it heavily onto the center of the table. Mr. Myers, over your 15-year career, you authored 62 use-of-force reports containing this exact, word-for-word sentence. Did 62 separate citizens all swing their arms at you in the exact same manner? Myers looked at Jenkins. Jenkins leaned in and whispered in his ear. Myers looked back at the camera. On the advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, Myers stated. Sterling nodded slowly. By invoking the Fifth Amendment in a civil deposition, the jury would be allowed to draw an adverse inference. Myers had just functionally admitted to perjury. Deposition concluded, Sterling said, turning off the camera. Jenkins followed Sterling out into the hallway as Myers stayed in the room. $3 million, Jenkins said, blocking the elevator doors. The city will wire the funds tomorrow. Full non-disclosure agreement. This video never goes public. The offer is rejected, Sterling said, pressing the lobby button. You're going to bankrupt the city's liability fund, Jenkins warned. We aren't just taking the city's money, Sterling replied as the doors opened. We are sending these transcripts to the district attorney. Within 48 hours, the district attorney's office received the 62 reports and the video of Myers pleading the fifth. The DA immediately placed Myers on the Brady list. His name was permanently entered into a statewide database of law enforcement officers with severe credibility issues. He was legally barred from ever testifying in a criminal court again. Because Myers was now an invalid witness, the DA's office was forced to review every active case he was attached to. By Friday afternoon, the county quietly dropped criminal charges on 34 pending cases, where Myers was the primary arresting officer. David Sterling did not stop with Officer Myers. Proving one patrolman committed perjury was a localized victory. To tear down the system, Sterling had to prove the command staff knew about the fabricated reports and actively covered them up. The next morning, Sterling subpoenaed Sergeant William Hayes, Myers' shift supervisor. Hayes had authorized 41 of the 62 fabricated reports. Hayes sat at the deposition table. Sterling didn't start with the reports. He opened a thick blue binder. "Sergeant," Sterling said, "the department's standard operating procedure requires a supervisor to review all available body camera footage before approving a use of force report." Sterling slid a stack of 41 identical reports across the mahogany table. Every single document bore Hayes' signature under the word "approved." Between 2015 and 2024, you approved 41 reports where Officer Myers used the exact same sentence to justify a violent takedown. Did you review the footage for these incidents before signing your name? Hayes stared at the stack of paper. The trap was absolute. If he answered yes, he admitted to watching video evidence that contradicted the reports, making him an active accomplice to perjury. If he answered no, he admitted to a decade of gross negligence, proving the exact systemic failure Sterling needed for the lawsuit. Hayes looked at the city attorney. The city attorney remained completely silent. There was no legal objection that could save him. "On the advice of counsel," Hayes stated, his voice tight, "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination." Sterling didn't blink. Over the next 48 hours, he deposed 2 other patrol sergeants and the precinct's lieutenant. Confronted with their own signatures, they faced the exact same dilemma. One by one, the entire supervisory chain invoked the Fifth Amendment. Because the deposition transcripts were public record, the fallout bypassed the local news and went straight to the financial sector. By Thursday morning, the transcripts reached the underwriter for the city's liability insurance carrier. At 2 p.m., a courier delivered a formal letter to the mayor. Because the depositions revealed a deliberate pattern of ignoring civil rights violations, the carrier refused to cover any damages in the Leon Grant lawsuit. Worse, they issued a 30-day notice of policy cancellation. Without active liability insurance, the police cruisers couldn't legally leave the precinct lot. The mayor bypassed the city attorney entirely and called an emergency closed-door session of the city council. The local government was no longer defending a lawsuit. They were trying to prevent the city from losing its police force. Before the city council could even draft a settlement offer, the federal government stepped in. At 9 a.m. on Monday, 2 black Suburbans parked directly in front of the Central City Police Headquarters. Attorneys from the Department of Justice walked into the lobby, flanked by FBI agents. They bypassed the front desk and walked straight to the chief of police's office. They handed him a formal notification. The DOJ was launching a full investigation into the department's practices. Simultaneously, the FBI agents entered the precinct's server room. They presented a federal warrant and immediately locked down the department's email and dispatch servers, ensuring no supervisor could delete messages regarding Myers or the approved reports. The chief of police read the DOJ notification letter in silence. He didn't call the mayor. He didn't call the union. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a sheet of department letterhead, and wrote a 1-sentence letter of immediate resignation. At 8:15 p.m., the mayor of Central City bypassed his legal team and called David Sterling directly. "The DOJ is in our building," the mayor said, his voice clipped. "Our insurance is gone. How do we end this tonight?" Sterling put the phone on speaker. Leon Grant sat across the desk, listening in silence. "3 terms," Sterling said, sliding a printed sheet across the desk to Leon. "First, an $8.5 million settlement. Without insurance, that comes straight from the city's operating fund," the mayor fired back. "We don't have it." "Find it," Sterling replied. "Second term, no non-disclosure agreement. The settlement is public record. Mr. Grant retains full publication rights to the library footage, the deposition, and all 62 fabricated reports. If those reports go public unredacted, it triggers a wave of new civil suits," the mayor warned. "Then your captain shouldn't have approved them," Sterling stated flatly. "Third, the city will preemptively agree to a federal consent decree. An independent auditor will review every use of force incident for the next 5 years." "If we agree to the oversight," the mayor asked, dropping the defensive tone, "will you at least seal the tape of Myers pleading the Fifth?" Sterling looked across the desk at Leon. Leon held his gaze and shook his head once. "The terms are non-negotiable," Sterling said. "You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to sign. If you don't, we leak your insurance cancellation to the financial press." The line was quiet for 10 seconds. "Jenkins will draft the paperwork," the mayor said, and disconnected. Former Officer Myers stood beside his metal desk in the bullpen. He placed a coffee mug, a handful of pens, and a framed photograph into a cardboard banker's box. He picked up the box and walked toward the exit. A dozen patrol officers and 2 sergeants were in the room. No one spoke. No one offered a handshake. Myers handed his precinct key card to the desk sergeant, pushed through the double-glass doors, and walked out into the parking lot. Because of his placement on the statewide Brady list, he was permanently unemployable in law enforcement or private security. At 10 a.m. the following morning, an $8.5 million wire transfer cleared the municipal bank and landed in the trust account of Sterling and Partners. At the exact same time, a federally appointed monitor walked into the Central City Police headquarters. The monitor bypassed the front desk and moved into a converted office directly adjacent to internal affairs. Under the signed consent decree, the department lost its autonomy. For the next 5 years, no officer would file a use of force report without an independent, external review. Leon Grant didn't buy a sports car or a mansion. 3 weeks after the wire transfer cleared, Leon stood on the sidewalk 3 blocks from the county courthouse. He held a set of keys to a newly leased 2-story brick building. The temporary banner above the door read, "The Grant Civil Rights Legal Clinic." Inside the empty office, Leon set up a folding plastic table. He placed his silver laptop on it, the exact same laptop from the library. He opened the browser. On his screen was a public unencrypted cloud directory. It contained the raw Zoom footage, the 62 fabricated police reports, and the complete, unedited video of former Officer Myers invoking the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. Because the mayor had surrendered the non-disclosure agreement, there was no legal mechanism left to hide the evidence. The city's secrets belonged to Leon. He highlighted the files, dragged them into the public folder, and clicked publish. Within an hour, the first wave of civil rights attorneys in the state began downloading the files to prepare their own lawsuits. The trap hadn't just caught Myers. It had caught the entire system. Officer Myers bet his badge that a student wouldn't know his rights. That bet cost the city $8.5 million and broke a corrupt system. But think about this. If that Zoom camera wasn't rolling, Myers would still be on patrol today. Would you have stayed calm in Leon's shoes? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more real stories of corrupt egos hitting the brick wall of the law.
Investigation officially closed. For additional unedited footage, remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for trusting Bodycam Incident Reports.